Hello and welcome to ComSpark Magazine, the interview series. I'm Dave Hammond with Parallel Technologies, and we're partnering with ComSpark Magazine on a series of interviews. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Chris Hickok, the CIO of Home City Ice. So Chris, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So Chris, over the course of the past couple of years, we're seeing the model of CapEx versus OpEx. In fact, for Christmas this year, I got my wife a monthly subscription from a car wash perspective.
Good husband.
So as we're moving things to an operational expenditure, we're seeing vendors kind of wrap that service piece up into a monthly cost rather than leaving it to your own internal IT team. So in a sense, outsourcing those components, are you seeing the same philosophy shift?
I am, and I can't say it's totally ubiquitous in everything that we're purchasing, but it's interesting. A suite of like photo editing products that I've bought the license for the last 20 years, and just bought, as they updated. I can no longer do that. It has to be on a recurring monthly plan. So models that you never thought would change, and I don't even know that it makes sense that they did change, have changed on us. So yes, seeing a ton of that, seeing it in a lot of software type products, seeing it in some of the hardware as well, to the extent that that's still the best piece of equipment, piece of software, piece of anything, that we'll stick with it. But we do ask the question as we see those things move: are we getting a value add for what we're paying now? And there are enough of them that have not shifted to where if we don't feel like that's a value add for what we're doing, that we don't make the shift. We'll change a technology if we don't feel like the pricing model, we're getting that sort of value for. So it's a curious time. I think it makes sense in some cases. And I believe me, I understand you've got to get recurring revenue models are great from a provider standpoint, right? Like I don't have to worry about what's going to happen next year as much. I can have some kind of predictability. So, it's great from that perspective, but just understand from the customer's perspective, at times we've got to say, okay, I see you're doing this. Does it make sense? So really kind of think through that. That's kind of trite and super obvious, but think through that use case for your customer. Are they getting value for what you're putting out there, and enough to keep them with your product versus a competitor's?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It's funny. We actually, as a consultant selling technology, there's pros and cons to either direction that you go. So what we like to do is just kind of lay it out there. And, the pendulum has shifted to cloud. We think it may come back to premise at some point. We don't know when, but it's just an interesting time. And to your point, technology changes. The only thing you can do is be prepared for change.
Absolutely. Yeah. Be agile, right?
Yeah. Chris, I'm seeing a lot of activity around kind of mergers and acquisitions. Are you seeing that kind of in your industry?
Absolutely. Yes. So we have been our industry for probably the last, I'm going to say 10 to 15 years has really sort of been in sort of a consolidation type play. It's a very capital intense industry to get to. And frankly, delivering packaged ice for some people isn't the sexiest thing that they've ever seen. And so you get a business owner that started this company and started a company and built it from the ground up for a 20, 30-year period. And they say, hey, son, I'm thinking about retiring. Would you like to take over? The kid's like, oh, heck no. I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. I'm in law school. I'm not touching this. And so it's rare that we're seeing, these businesses be handed down generation to generation. And from our perspective, I don't want to force anybody out of the business if they don't want to be out of the business, but I'm also happy to be their retirement package when they want to get out. Right. And so we're finding, and I've purchased a couple of these companies and worked through it with the previous owners. And it is one of the most rewarding things that you could do is, kind of hand that guy or gal a check, as they're selling their company, that is their retirement. And it's just, vindication for the hard work that they've done. But yes, by and large, that trend has been playing out for the last 10 or 15 years, to the point where there are fewer competitors in the space today than there ever have been, of smaller. Now, of course, there's still larger people out there, and you see that from afar and you think, oh man, these big bad companies are buying everyone out. And it's not the case that anyone's being forced. It's just, I'm ready to retire. I have nobody to give this business to. And so I think us being a family company tends to resonate with a lot of these smaller owners. They're like, if I'm going to take my small business and sell it out to someone, at least I would like it to kind of remain with that same family sort of perspective. So we tend to get a lot of phone calls on companies that sell out, for retirement. And so it's been an interesting 10 or 15 years, and it'll be an interesting 5 or so years going forward. I wouldn't say that the M&A space has heated up, considerably over the last year or so, like you're seeing in other areas like technology.
Yeah.
It's just been consistent all throughout.
That was my next question is, have you seen it be accelerated with the emergence of COVID, but it's great to know that it hasn't picked up over the past year and a half or so.
Not significantly, maybe a little, but I've seen some, graphics and numbers from other industries, and we're not seeing anything like that, but it's definitely been a consolidating type industry for the last decade.
Okay. So Chris, lastly, we're, as a country, we're beginning to open back up. People are getting back to work. And just when we're doing that, it appears that we may be taking a step backwards with the new Delta variant. So given all the uncertainty with COVID, what did you learn from the past year? And what are some of the key takeaways moving forward with this new reality?
Absolutely. And again, it might be another sort of uncommon or unpopular answer, but supplying grocery products to grocery stores were considered essential throughout the bulk of the pandemic. And so we didn't see this huge kind of backlash, of course, in the practices that we had to have through masking and hand washing and distancing. There were some changes, no doubt, and we wanted to make sure that all of our employees were safe. But we continued to operate the supplier product throughout all of it. So didn't quite see the reeling that others did. Now I would say, I mentioned like our corporate support and other roles that weren't necessarily deemed essential to be in the office through the pandemic. And so, we've enabled those roles to work from wherever they need to stay safe, and implemented some practices there. But for us, we've had to kind of adjust to the normal anyway. And so hasn't been a huge change or transition from us or for us.
That's great. That's great, because there's a lot of people that have been directly impacted with this. It's impacted their livelihood. To know you guys are succeeding and growing your business, that's great to hear.
Yeah, and I my heart really goes out to those affected, and so much of this, it just seems so senseless to some degree that some products were able to be distributed and others not. So when I say all of that, my heart really does go out to those people, and I hate to hear that they were affected, and I can only hope that the next few months will be smooth sailing, and we'll get back to some degree of normalcy to where everyone's livelihoods are good.
Let's hope so. I'm sick and tired of this.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Chris, thanks so much for joining me today. For the audience, if you'd like to see more, please visit ComSpark.tech for additional interviews. So Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.